What happens when one impulsive betrayal destroys the very life built to prove love had matured? How does a single night, planned, justified, excused, turn into a legal storm that leaves the liar defending herself on paper? And when a husband stops begging for answers and starts gathering evidence, is it still heartbreak or just justice served cold? My name is Selene Ward. I'm 34, and the night I ruined my marriage started with a simple lie. I told my husband I'd be late to our anniversary dinner because of work. Daniel believed me. He always did. He was the kind of man who trusted quietly, who never questioned where I was or why. That calm used to make me feel safe, but lately, it made me restless. I wanted to feel wanted again, not just cared for. So when my ex, Adrian, messaged that afternoon, just a harmless, "Congrats on the anniversary, remember our old spot?" I told myself, meeting him for one drink wasn't wrong. It was nostalgia, closure, a small thrill before returning to my real life. I told him I couldn't stay long. I told myself the same thing. By the time I left the hotel, it was almost 9. I had lipstick smudged on my wrist, perfume that wasn't mine clinging to my hair, and guilt I thought I could hide. When I reached the restaurant, Daniel's table was empty, the check already paid, a single note resting beside the candle. "Maybe next year, Selene." I told myself it was just a misunderstanding, but by the next morning, he wasn't asking where I'd been. He was collecting proof of it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The morning of our anniversary started like any other. Daniel woke early, brewed coffee, kissed me on the forehead, and said he'd pick me up at 7 for dinner. I smiled, pretending to be touched, but inside I felt bored. That was always Daniel, steady, dependable, predictable. The same breakfast, the same tone of voice, the same way he'd reach for my hand, like it was routine instead of romance. He'd chosen the restaurant, of course. The same one where we'd gone every year. I wanted to suggest somewhere new, something with music or lights, but he'd already made the reservation. "You love that place," he'd said. And I had, once. Before life turned quiet. At work, I tried to focus, but I couldn't shake the restless feeling that had been building for months. It wasn't that Daniel was cruel. It was that he was too good. He didn't fight, didn't challenge me, didn't make me feel anything except safe. And safety, after a while, felt suffocating. Then around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. The name on the screen made my stomach twist, Adrian Blake. It had been almost 8 years since I'd seen him, but the message was short and casual. "Happy anniversary. Still meeting at the same restaurant." At first I laughed out loud, the audacity of it, but as I stared at the message, something sharp and electric flickered through me. Adrian had always been the opposite of Daniel, impulsive, charming, reckless. He made every moment feel alive, even when it hurt. I wrote back before I could stop myself. "Very funny. I'm not there yet." He replied instantly. "Then join me for a drink first, for old time's sake." My heart thudded. I typed "I can't" 3 times before deleting it each time. Finally I sent, "One drink. That's all." It's strange how quickly you can convince yourself something harmless will stay harmless. I told myself it would be a short catch-up before dinner. I'd be careful. I'd have a drink, reminisce, then go meet my husband and pretend nothing had happened. When I arrived at the bar, Adrian was already waiting. He looked almost the same, slightly older, a bit leaner, but still carrying that careless confidence that had once made me lose my mind. He stood up, smiled, and said, "You still look exactly how I remember you." I laughed, trying to sound casual. "You always did know how to exaggerate." He leaned closer. "Not about you." The bartender brought us wine. I told him I could only stay 20 minutes, but the conversation stretched. We talked about the past, about the stupid fights we used to have, about how we'd both grown up. He teased me about being married now, asked if Daniel still looked at me the way he used to. I said he was busy, tired, reliable. Adrian smiled like he understood exactly what I meant. When he reached across the table and touched my hand, I didn't pull away. I told myself it didn't mean anything. It was just nostalgia. Then the minutes blurred. The second drink arrived, and he said, "I missed this." I should have left, I know that, but instead I followed him upstairs. Everything after that felt like watching someone else make a mistake in slow motion. The hotel room was small, the curtains half drawn, the light soft enough to blur the edges of guilt. He kissed me like he'd been waiting years to do it again. I didn't stop him. I didn't think about Daniel sitting at a table somewhere, checking his watch, wondering where I was. When it was over, I dressed in silence. Adrian tried to joke, but the sound of it made me sick. I told him I had to go. He said, "Same time next year?" I didn't answer. I left before he could see the panic on my face. The restaurant was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like miles. My reflection in the car window looked like someone I didn't know. Hair messy, lipstick smudged, eyes wild. I texted Daniel, "Traffic's awful, be there soon." He didn't reply. When I walked into the restaurant, the hostess recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Ward," she said softly, "your husband left about 15 minutes ago. He asked me to give you this." She handed me a folded piece of paper. On it, in Daniel's neat handwriting, were 4 words, "Maybe next year, Celine." My knees went weak. I sat down at the empty table, staring at the candle flickering over 2 untouched glasses of wine. Everyone around me kept eating, laughing, clinking forks and glasses. While I sat there feeling the walls close in, I left the note on the table and went home. He wasn't there. His car was gone, his side of the bed empty. I told myself he just needed air, that I could fix it in the morning. But when I finally fell asleep, the note burned in my mind like a brand. When I woke up, sunlight poured into the room. Daniel still wasn't home. At first, I panicked, then convinced myself he was trying to teach me a lesson. He'd come back eventually. He always did. I made coffee, pretending everything was normal. Then I saw his phone charger missing from the counter, his toothbrush too. My stomach twisted. I called him once, then again. No answer. On the 3rd try, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message. "I'm sorry I missed dinner. Please call me, we can talk." I tried to sound calm, not guilty. At work, I told everyone Daniel and I had a little fight. I even laughed when I said it, like it was a small thing. My coworker Renee gave me a look but didn't push. "He's probably fine," she said. "You always make it sound worse than it is." That afternoon, I checked our shared bank account. I don't know what made me do it, habit maybe, but I froze when I saw that several transfers had been made overnight. All of them to a new account under Daniel's name. Almost everything was gone. I called the bank. They said he'd changed the passwords and transferred his direct deposits. My voice cracked when I asked, "Is that legal?" The woman on the phone said quietly, "Yes, ma'am. It's a joint account, but he has full rights." For the first time, I felt afraid. Not because I'd been caught, but because I couldn't read him anymore. Daniel had always been gentle, predictable. This version of him, calm, methodical, was something else entirely. That night, I sent him another message. "Please, just talk to me. I can explain." I waited hours, checking my phone every few minutes. Nothing. Then, around 10, a text arrived. It wasn't from Daniel. It was from an unknown number. "Please direct any future communication to my attorney. You'll receive documentation soon." I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading the words until they stopped making sense. Attorney. Documentation. It felt unreal, like some bureaucratic nightmare. I called Renee, crying. She said, "Celine, what did you do?" "I just made a mistake," I said. "He's making it bigger than it is." The next morning, a courier arrived at the door. He handed me a thick envelope. The sender's name was D. Ward, via legal counsel. Inside were several pages: financial separation notice, preliminary custody request for Maya, and attached photocopies of supporting evidence. I flipped through them in disbelief. Hotel receipts, credit card transactions. One even had a still image from a security camera in the hotel lobby. Me and Adrian walking in together, my hand brushing his arm. The timestamp read 7:18 p.m., exactly when I was supposed to be meeting Daniel. I sat on the kitchen floor, the papers scattered around me, shaking. I thought of all the lies I'd told, how easily I'd said them. Just one drink, just a misunderstanding, just work running late, each one now reduced to proof on paper. I called Renee again, begging her to help me figure out what to do. She sounded hesitant. "Celine, he's serious. This isn't anger. He's building something. You should get ahead of it." "Get ahead of it how?" I asked. "Talk to a lawyer, or him, but don't lie anymore." I laughed bitterly. "That's the problem, Renee. The truth won't help me now." That evening, I drove to Daniel's office, thinking if I could just see him face to face, he'd soften. His car was there, parked neatly outside. I waited 20 minutes before walking in. His receptionist looked startled. "Mrs. Ward," she said, "I think Mr. Ward's in a meeting." I ignored her and opened the door. Daniel was sitting behind his desk, calm as ever. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Celine," he said, standing slowly, "you shouldn't be here." "I just want to talk," I said. My voice trembled. "You can't do this to me. To us." He nodded once. "You're right. I can't do this to you. You already did it to yourself." I started crying then, real tears, messy and desperate. "I made a mistake, Daniel. I don't even know why. I was stupid. I was lonely." He interrupted softly. "You weren't lonely. You were bored. There's a difference." That calm tone again. It was unbearable. "So what now? You're just going to throw everything away?" He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Everything was thrown away the minute you walked into that hotel. I'm just cleaning up the mess." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said, almost gently, "You'll get official notice about the house next. I'll make sure you have what you need, but this..." He gestured vaguely between us. "This is over." I wanted to scream, to break something, to make him feel the chaos I felt. Instead, I just whispered, "Do you hate me?" He paused. "No, I just don't know you anymore." I left his office shaking, humiliated. Outside, the air felt sharp, like the world itself was rejecting me. When I got home, the house felt colder. Maya's toys were still in the corner, her drawings on the fridge. I sat on the couch staring at them until my phone buzzed again. It was an email from Daniel's lawyer. "Formal proceedings will begin Monday. Please avoid contact until advised." 3 days earlier, I'd been planning a romantic dinner. Now, I was the defendant in my own life. I went upstairs, opened the closet, and found Daniel's jacket still hanging there. In the pocket was a folded napkin from the restaurant. On it, his handwriting again. I waited as long as I could. That night, I stopped pretending I could fix anything. I realized the only person who'd been fooled by my lies was me. For the next few days, I lived inside a blur. I told myself that if I could just get Daniel to see me face to face one more time, he'd soften. That's what he always did. Eventually, he forgave. But he didn't call, didn't text, didn't even ask about Maya, who was staying with his mother. Every morning, I woke up to silence, and every night I convinced myself he was just waiting for the right moment to reach out. Then, on Thursday, an email arrived from his lawyer with the subject line Discovery Materials. I clicked it open, expecting financial paperwork, but what I found was far worse. Hotel security footage attached as a file, timestamped, labeled Exhibit A. My hands shook as I pressed play. There I was, in high definition, walking into the hotel lobby with Adrian beside me. I looked happy, not guilty. Laughing, tilting my head, brushing my hair back like I didn't have a husband waiting at a table. There was even a brief clip from the hallway camera, me pressing the elevator button, Adrian's arm around my waist. I closed the laptop, heart racing, then reopened it seconds later. It was like staring at a stranger who wore my face but had none of my fear. My phone buzzed. "Renee." I answered quickly. "I saw your name online," she said. "Selena, what's happening?" "What do you mean, online?" "There's a post. Someone leaked something. It's all over the local page. People are saying you cheated on your anniversary." My knees went weak. I opened the site and saw it, a grainy screenshot from the hotel camera, shared with the caption, "Guess love has an expiration date." There were hundreds of comments, some mocking, some pitying, but all of them about me. I texted Daniel immediately. "You're cruel for doing this." He replied 2 hours later with one line, "I didn't share it, Selene. Truth leaks on its own." I wanted to hate him, but even that felt hollow. I was the one who had done this, yet part of me still believed he was punishing me too harshly. I told myself, everyone makes mistakes, but most people's mistakes aren't time-stamped and shared publicly. The next morning, I drove to his office again, ignoring his lawyer's warnings. He wasn't there. His secretary said he was working remotely. I asked for his address. She refused, polite but firm. That's when I realized I didn't even know where my husband was living anymore. When I returned home, there was a small envelope taped to my door. Inside was a printed copy of a bank statement showing zero balance in our joint account and a short note in his handwriting. "Please cancel any remaining shared cards. I've already removed your name from mine." That night, I met with my own lawyer, Vanessa, in a tiny downtown office. She listened patiently as I explained everything, leaving out only the worst parts. When I finished, she said, "He's building a case for full custody. And he's doing it cleanly. No slander, no public comments, just evidence." "He can't take Maya from me," I said. "He can, if he convinces the court that you create instability." "Instability? I made a mistake," Vanessa sighed. "Celine, the problem isn't the mistake. It's the pattern of denial that follows." I wanted to scream at her, but instead, I just asked, "So what do I do?" "Stop trying to spin the story, accept what's documented, and pray he still believes in mercy." Mercy. That word made me nauseous. Daniel didn't want mercy, he wanted silence. His kind of revenge wasn't rage, it was removal. 2 days later, I found out he'd moved into an apartment near his mother's house. I drove there on impulse, convinced if I could just talk to him, he'd listen. When I arrived, Clara opened the door instead. She looked exhausted but composed. "Clara, please," I said. "I need to speak with him." "He's not here." "Then let me see Maya." She shook her head. "She's asleep, and it's not my call anymore." I felt tears prick my eyes. "You think I'm a monster, don't you?" Clara looked at me quietly. "No, monsters don't feel guilt, but you broke my son's heart and blamed him for bleeding." I couldn't breathe. I turned and walked away before I said something I'd regret. That night, I sat in the kitchen staring at the stack of legal letters piling up on the counter. It didn't feel real. Just a week earlier, I'd been choosing a dress for dinner. Now, I was learning how to respond to subpoenas. By Monday, the summons arrived for preliminary mediation. I didn't even open it right away. I left it on the table, unopened, like that might stop time from moving forward. But it didn't. It never does. The mediation was set for Friday morning. I spent the days before rehearsing my version of the truth, how it had been a mistake, how I'd been confused, how Daniel's emotional distance had pushed me into it. I even wrote out lines like a speech. "I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. Can't we move past this?" When the day came, Vanessa met me outside the courthouse. She handed me a folder and said, "Don't talk too much. Let him make the first move." Inside the room, Daniel was already seated. He didn't look angry. He looked like someone who had already made peace with the outcome. There was something terrifying about that calm. The mediator, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, asked us to start by stating our intentions. I said I wanted to reconcile, to keep our family together. Daniel said he wanted legal clarity. They reviewed the documents one by one, every statement, every receipt, every screenshot. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. When they brought up the hotel footage, I whispered, "Do we really need to watch that again?" Daniel's lawyer said softly, "The evidence speaks for itself." They pressed play. The silence in the room was unbearable. I couldn't look up, but I could feel everyone's eyes on the screen. When it ended, Daniel didn't say a word. Finally, the mediator asked if I wanted to respond. I said, "It was one mistake, a single lapse in judgment. That shouldn't erase years of love." Daniel looked at me then, really looked. "It didn't erase them, Celine. It just showed they weren't as real as you thought." I felt something crack inside me. You can't just stop loving someone overnight. He nodded slightly. "You're right. I stopped months before that night. I just didn't realize it until I watched you walk away." I tried to fight back tears. "You're being cruel." "No," he said quietly. "I'm being done." The mediator cleared her throat, shifting the papers. "We can move to the custody discussion." That was when I finally lost control. "You can't take my daughter," I shouted. "You can't use this to make me the villain." Daniel stayed seated, his voice calm. "I'm not using anything. I'm protecting her from growing up in a house where love is just a performance." The mediator called for a short break. I left the room shaking, leaning against the wall outside. Vanessa followed, murmuring, "You need to breathe." "I can't lose her," I whispered. "Then stop pretending this isn't your fault," she said. When we returned, the mediator summarized the terms. Joint assets frozen pending division, full custody with Daniel until review, supervised visitation for me. I barely heard the rest. My ears rang like I was underwater. Daniel thanked the mediator, stood up and left without looking back. Afterward, I sat alone in the hallway. Vanessa said she'd call me later with instructions, then left too. The building was quiet, sterile, filled with the faint hum of fluorescent lights. I sat there until the janitor asked if I was okay. I nodded, even though I wasn't. When I finally stepped outside, the world felt too bright. Across the street, I saw Daniel's car parked by the curb. He was helping Maya into the back seat, smiling softly as she handed him a drawing. They looked peaceful. I wanted to run over, to shout, to beg him to look at me, but I didn't. Instead, I watched them drive away. That image, my husband and my daughter leaving me behind, burned itself into my memory. That evening, I went home and poured a glass of wine. The house felt dead. No laughter, no voices, no movement, just the ticking of the kitchen clock. I looked around and realized how small my world had become. I checked my phone. A new message from an unknown number blinked on the screen. "The property reassignment will be finalized next week. You'll receive official notice." I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and fell, screen cracked. Later that night, I logged onto social media out of habit. Daniel's profile was gone, deleted or blocked, I didn't know. But his mother had posted a photo of Maya drawing at the kitchen table with the caption, "Peace comes when truth replaces pretending." I stared at it until my vision blurred. The next morning, I went to the restaurant, the one where I was supposed to have dinner with Daniel. I sat at the same table, ordered coffee, and stared at the empty seat across from me. The waiter recognized me, hesitated, and asked softly, "Will your husband be joining you?" I smiled bitterly. "No," I said. "He's finally learned not to wait." The waiter nodded, said nothing, and walked away. I sat there long after the coffee went cold, staring at the door, half expecting Daniel to walk in. He didn't. He never would. When I finally left, I stopped by the front counter to pay. The hostess handed me a receipt, folded neatly, and said, "Someone left this here for you last week." I unfolded it outside. It was the bill from our anniversary dinner, the one Daniel had paid for alone. At the bottom, in his handwriting, was a single line. "Next year you can celebrate with whoever you're late for." I sank onto the curb, clutching the paper, tears spilling down my face. I wanted to call him, to scream that I was sorry, that I'd give anything to undo it. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. I hadn't just betrayed him that night. I'd taught him to stop hoping. And once a man like Daniel stops hoping, there's nothing left to save. The final hearing came faster than I expected. I had spent weeks telling myself Daniel would call before it happened, that he'd want to talk one last time, that he'd still care enough to stop this before it went too far. But he didn't. The only thing that came was a letter confirming the court date, with his lawyer's name printed at the bottom, like a closing signature to a story I hadn't realized had already ended. That morning, I sat in front of the mirror longer than usual, trying to make myself look calm, competent, misunderstood, but not guilty. Vanessa told me appearances mattered. "Be composed," she said. "They'll be looking for signs of instability." Instability. I laughed when she said it the first time. Now I saw what she meant. I had been unraveling slowly, thread by thread. When I arrived at the courthouse, the air inside felt too still, too cold. Daniel was already there, standing by the window with his lawyer. He didn't look at me when I entered. He didn't need to. His silence filled the entire room. I used to find his quiet comforting. Now it made me want to scream. The judge started with the evidence. Again. Hotel receipts, timestamps, screenshots, transfers, even a printed copy of that single note he'd left at the restaurant. "Maybe next year, Celine." The irony of seeing it listed as Exhibit D nearly broke me. Vanessa spoke for me, repeating that I accepted responsibility but wanted a chance to rebuild, for our daughter's sake if not for the marriage. She said my actions came from emotional neglect, not malice. I nodded when prompted, keeping my face composed, pretending the words didn't sound rehearsed. When it was Daniel's turn, he didn't talk about me. He talked about Maya, about how she needed consistency, about how children shouldn't grow up in homes built on half-truths. "I'm not asking for revenge," he said quietly. "I just want peace." The courtroom stayed silent. Even the judge seemed to pause, her pen still in her hand. Then she read her decision. Full custody awarded to Daniel, supervised visitation for me, joint assets divided in proportion to income. My lawyer squeezed my hand as the words echoed through the room, but it felt like I was watching it all from underwater. Daniel stood, thanked the judge, and gathered his papers. I expected him to leave, but instead he turned to me. For a moment, I thought he might say something kind, something that would give me a thread of hope. Instead, he said, "You told me once that I never made you feel alive. I hope this makes you feel something." Then he left. Vanessa told me I should stay seated until everyone cleared out. "You don't want to run into him outside," she said, but I didn't care. I walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway, my heels echoing against the tile. Through the glass doors, I saw Daniel outside, holding Maya's hand. She looked up at him and said something I couldn't hear, and he laughed. A quiet, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. The kind of laugh that used to be mine. I wanted to call out her name, but I stopped myself. The order was clear, no contact without notice. The law, apparently, didn't care about nostalgia. When they drove away, the sound of the car faded into the distance until it was just me and the echo of my own breathing. That night, I sat on the couch surrounded by half-empty boxes and unopened mail. The apartment felt like a waiting room for a life that no longer wanted me. I opened one of the boxes at random and found our wedding album inside. The photos felt like fiction now. Two people smiling, promising forever, not realizing forever could end quietly in a courthouse. I flipped through until I reached the last page. A picture of us dancing, the photographer's flash catching us mid-laugh. Daniel's hand on my waist, mine on his shoulder. For a second, I could almost hear the song. I pressed my fingers to the photo, whispering, "I ruined this." The silence answered me back. A few hours later, there was a knock at the door. When I opened it, a courier handed me a sealed envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel's. Inside was a short note. "The transfer is complete. You'll have what you need. Please don't contact me directly anymore. All updates about Maya will come through legal channels. I wish you peace." That word again. Peace. The word he used like it was both punishment and mercy. I sat there, holding the letter, until the ink smudged under my thumb. The part of me that wanted to scream and fight finally went quiet. He had done what I never could, ended things without noise. The next morning, I woke to a message from an unknown number. A single line. "A package was left for you at the restaurant." I hesitated, then drove there anyway. The same place where everything had started and ended. The hostess recognized me, but didn't smile. She simply handed me a small brown box with my name written on it. When I opened it inside my car, there was a folded piece of paper and a small USB drive. The paper read, "For your records. I think you should finally see what I saw." I didn't want to, but I plugged it into my laptop as soon as I got home. The file started playing automatically. It was the hotel footage again. But this time, Daniel had slowed it down. Every frame lingered longer. The laughter, the elevator, the touch. Then came a pause, and the camera switched to another angle. The restaurant later that night. The empty chair, the untouched wine, the waiter clearing the table. The timestamp read 9:03 p.m. At the end of the footage, a single sentence appeared on the screen in white text. "You made me wait for someone who was never coming." I closed the laptop, my chest tightening. For the first time since everything began, I felt the full weight of what I'd done. Not just the affair, but the humiliation of letting someone love me deeply and rewarding that love with deception. I'd told myself for weeks that Daniel's revenge was cruel. But watching that video, I saw what it really was: clarity. He wasn't destroying me out of spite. He was setting himself free. That night, I poured the last of the wine and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. I wondered where he and Maya were. If she was laughing, if she missed me, if she asked about her mother. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Another message from Daniel's lawyer. Final documentation attached. Divorce granted as of today. No signature from him. Just legal confirmation that our marriage was officially over. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen until it dimmed. The next morning, I packed a few clothes, my laptop, and the wedding album. I left the apartment keys on the counter. There was nothing else worth keeping. Before I left, I went to the restaurant one last time. I asked for the same table, the one by the window where he'd waited. The waiter hesitated but nodded. When I sat down, the candle flickered exactly like it had that night. I ordered a single glass of wine and stared at the empty chair across from me. I imagined Daniel sitting there again, checking his watch, still hoping I'd walk in. This time, I whispered to the air, "I'm here." No one heard me. That was the point. When I finished, I left cash on the table and walked outside. The city was buzzing, alive, careless. I envied that. I reached into my bag, pulled out the restaurant receipt he'd once left me, the one that said, "Maybe next year, Celine." I unfolded it slowly, then wrote underneath his words with my pen, "You were right, there won't be one." I left it on a nearby bench and walked away. As I reached the corner, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Just a photo. Daniel and Maya at a park, both smiling. Maya held an ice cream cone, and Daniel was looking at her, not the camera. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't hurt the way I expected it to. It just felt final. I typed one reply. "She looks happy," Please tell her I love her. I never got an answer. I deleted his number after that, not out of anger but out of surrender. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings, I stood on my balcony and whispered to no one. He was always waiting for me to grow up. I just never did. That's the truth I carry now. Not guilt, not anger, just the quiet understanding that sometimes the punishment isn't losing love. It's realizing you were never worthy of the kind that forgives everything until it doesn't. I finished the last sip of wine, turned off the light, and let the dark finally swallow the noise I'd made of my life. Some people destroy what they love by shouting. I did it by being too sure he'd always stay. Now, the only thing left of us is a video, a receipt, and a table for two that will never be filled again. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.